What's up, everybody? Pastor Matt here. Thanks for checking into the YouTube channel. Today, we're going to have a little conversation with my friend Nathaniel Sheets. Nathaniel is one of the ruling elders of our church, Gospel Fellowship PCA, and he's got a pretty interesting role in the development of a new Spanish translation children's book, actually, of Pilgrim's Progress. So, Nathaniel, say hi to all the people out there.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So Pilgrim's Progress is one of the most important books in all of Christian literature. We're going to talk a little bit about a special edition here, but you've read it, I imagine. What do you think about the book? You like it?
Oh yeah, yeah. Especially the first part. It's certainly one of my favorite books. I haven't read it as many times as I probably should have, but it's certainly the lessons in it are great, and to be able to give those lessons to kids, I've found has been a real value.
Yeah, it's an incredible book. If you haven't read Pilgrim's Progress, you have to do yourself a favor and read it. It truly is one of the best Christian books of all time. I think Spurgeon said he read it over 100 times. Have you ever heard that about Spurgeon before?
I don't know if I heard that specific one, but a lot of people do it every year. Like they'll read Pilgrim's Progress every year. It's just part of their routine.
Yeah, we used to have a small group in my house. In fact, we did it twice where I took different groups through the book Pilgrim's Progress from beginning to end. We only did part one, but man, what an incredible journey. If you're not aware, it's kind of like, well, how would you describe it, Nathaniel? It's kind of like the story of redemption, the
Mhm.
personal experience of redemption as told through kind of an extended analogy of an adventure story. Is that how you describe it?
Yeah, an adventure story, like a journey, as alluded in, as we'll see later, but a journey not unlike something like Lord of the Rings. Just this
Yeah.
a great story, great adventure, lots of stuff going on all the time, but much more clearly an allegory than Lord of the Rings or something like that, where the author is not pulling any punches. Bunyan really wants you to get the point that there are real dangers in the spiritual life and there are real joys in the spiritual life, and he wants you to learn something from the book and avoid some of the pitfalls that he himself had fallen into. I think it's very autobiographical in that sense, that he portrays Christian in many ways, reflecting his own spiritual walk.
Yeah, it's autobiographical for the author John Bunyan, who was a Baptistic Puritan, spent quite a bit of time in prison for his faith at a time when nonconformity was illegal in England. But what's interesting is even though he's kind of telling you his own spiritual journey, pretty much everybody who ever reads the book begins to connect on a deeper level and say, yeah, this describes my experience too. If you're not familiar, it begins with him feeling conviction in the city of destruction, and then he goes out on a long journey to basically to go to heaven. And of course, he experiences Christ and his grace along the way, and fights the devil, and makes some friends and makes some enemies and gets persecuted. Do you have, Nathaniel, a favorite scene from any part of the book?
Hmm. Yeah, my son asked me this recently. It's tough. I think the fight with Apollyon is probably up there, along with following up after that, walking through the valley of the shadow of death.
Yeah.
That's very powerful, that portion of it, but also the experience in his experience in Vanity Fair, and the persecution that he goes through there, while resisting the temptations of materialism and so forth. Just there's a lot of application, even though the book was written 350 years ago. It has so many lessons for us today.
Yeah, I don't know about you. I suspect this may be true, but I read through the entire book with my own family at the dinner table for family devotions. It was a couple of years ago. I should probably do it again, but we just took a couple pages at a time and read through the book. And again, if you're not familiar, there's so much scripture either quoted directly into the dialogue of the book, or else alluded to indirectly, so that you practically do your devotions out of it, if you
Yeah.
know what I'm saying.
Yep.
You've read the book individually and as well as with your family.
Yeah, we haven't read the real thing, the unabridged version. My oldest is 4, so we're still working through we're still using the abridged children's version. But but we've been through that. I mean, dozens of times. It's really been something that that my kids have enjoyed and have really gotten into.
Well, if you're just joining us, again, thanks for joining this channel, watching today. My name is Matthew Everhard. I'm the pastor of Gospel Fellowship PCA. We are a Reformed Bible-believing church just north of Pittsburgh. If you happen to be looking for a church like that, we'd love to have you come worship with us. Of course, we meet on the Lord's Day. We have 2 services right now at 8:30 and 11 with Sunday school in between. So if you're anywhere north of Pittsburgh in Western Pennsylvania, please look us up, Gospel Fellowship PCA. You'll find us on the interwebs. All right, well, Nathaniel, we're talking about a special edition of this particular book today. So let's get into some of the details here about a work that you got yourself involved in. I want to hear a little bit about that story.
Sure.
So what kind of edition of Pilgrim's Progress are we talking about this afternoon?
Yeah, this is Little Pilgrim's Big Journey. This book came out a couple of years ago, and I've got a copy here too, where the author or the adapter really attempted to take the original story of Pilgrim's Progress and simplify it and illustrate it for a younger audience, for kids as little as 2, 3, 4 years old, and it's been a huge success. The book has hundreds of great reviews on Amazon. You look it up there, you can find it in a variety of different places, and parents across the board are just love this book and talk about the impact it's had on their kids' lives, little kids, bigger kids, and the benefits of something like this, being able to take Pilgrim's Progress and convert it to a story that's easy for a rambunctious and wiggly 3 or 4 year old is fantastic, because
yeah. So there's actually 2 parts here of the English translation. We're going to get into the Spanish here in just a moment, but some of the parts of this book are a little bit scary. We've already mentioned like a fight with the devil and things like that. How about the illustrations that come along with this? I imagine as a children's book, there's going to be a ton of full color illustrations and things like that. Do you think that they're appropriate for your kids' ages?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are certainly elements of the story of Pilgrim's Progress that are scarier than others, and depending on your kid, I think for the most part, though, these are going to be really, they're going to go over fine, even with little kids. So here's, for example, this is my son's favorite chapter 6, fighting Apolly, and here's Christian fighting the huge dragon Apolly, and and Christian, of course, wearing the armor of God, which the story explains, and so forth. And so an illustration like that, you can tell it's not it's very artsy. It's not graphic, those kinds of things. Perhaps the one scene that I've seen rendered very differently in some children's versions of the story is the circumstances of Faithful's death in Vanity Fair. That can certainly be very graphic if the story is attempting to show the trials that Faithful really went through. But the version here is much more calm. You see some flames there, so it's insinuated the cause of his death, but it's not. But it doesn't go into any graphic detail, and the text doesn't go into that either. So a little bit sanitized. There's the book ends on a happy note. It doesn't show ignorance going down to hell. So there are certain things like that are perhaps not as faithful to the original in some sense, not trying to be as direct and graphic as Bunyan perhaps was, but in order to make the book really appealing to younger children, make it more accessible to them.
Well, I trust you about as much as any other parent. I have commended you many times about what a great dad you are in reading to your kids and just raising them in the Lord. So I think viewers would take great consolation knowing that you are a very conscientious parent. So what about the Spanish edition? This is kind of where you personally come into play in this. So what we're actually talking about, there's the English translation, or
Mhm.
well, the English original available,
Right.
but there's a Spanish edition too. What's up with that?
Yeah, so the English version is available. You can buy it anywhere, like I mentioned. But we are, my family is a bilingual family. I speak only Spanish to my kids. And when we gave this book to my son, the English version to my son at Christmas, I didn't want to be left out. So if I was going to read this book to him, I had to translate it on the fly into Spanish for him.
Hmm.
And uh, he immediately was drawn to the book, and for the first 2 weeks of it, he insisted that we read it to him every day. That we read the
Hmm.
entire book, 200 plus
Wow,
pages, to him every day.
that's
Just a
cool.
few paragraphs of text per page, but still, uh, he would never he never sat for a book like that for that length of time. Obviously we would do it in chunks. He wouldn't sit for all 10 chapters every time, but it was incredible to see him just be so interested in reading this book. And to me, as the person who's trying to read this, translating it into Spanish on the fly, I'm thinking to myself, oh, this, we really need a Spanish edition of this, so that I'll have to do this, and it's something that would be much better quality than whatever translation I can come up with at the spur of the moment. So that was kind of the impetus for the idea on my end. It's not, of course, a very original idea. I think every author would love to have a book that publishes so well in English that a publisher comes to them and says, "Hey, would you like to do this in another language too?" It's like, sure, that sounds great. So but my experience, I started talking to a publisher called Poema. Poema.co is their website. Poiema.co. They're a pretty significant sized publishing house that specializes in Spanish language texts, run out of Colombia, South America. They've done I have a number of things that they've done. This is the Tim Keller's book on the Psalms, the songs of Jesus. And they've done a number of other works of Tim Keller, R.C. Sproul, and a variety of other Reformed and evangelical authors, and including, of course, kids' books. And so one of the things that really impressed me about Poema was the quality of their translations. There are plenty of Spanish translations that I've read that just full of errors or just doesn't sound great. They miss the range. Like the book's written for a 6-year-old, but they translate it for a 12-year-old, that kind of thing. But I've been impressed with Poema. Started talking to them about it, and they were interested, and so just kind of got the ball rolling.
Now, did you actually do part of the translation yourself, or were you just kind of the person who got the project initiated?
I did not do any of the original translation. They gave it to one of their professional translators who did an excellent job translating it for this age group. And then they sent me the draft, and I reviewed it, found a few little things where the English wasn't clear, but having background knowledge of Bunyan, or having read having read the thing dozens of times, gave me a little bit more insight into what the Spanish ought to say. And so they took those suggestions for what they were worth, and applied what made sense, and now they've got a completed translation that's ready to go to the printer.
That's awesome. So when does it actually come out then? The English is already available. You can
Mhm.
go to Amazon or whatever website you feel best to order from and get the English versions already. That's right.
Yep, that's correct.
And the
The Spanish
Spanish is going to come
version,
out when does the Spanish come out?
yeah, they're projecting December 15th. So they're projecting it'll be available this year for the holidays. So they got a pretty quick turnaround on printing, and it's going to be a great. Looks like it's going to be a great quality edition, hardback, with the gold foil and a ribbon.
Cool.
It's sewn binding, as I know your audience will appreciate.
That's right. Yeah. For sure.
Yep.
That's great. Now, just one more thing before we close up shop here. Our church is kind of doing something a little bit unique with this, just kind of helping this thing get started. You want to tell a little bit about what Gospel Fellowship is doing?
Yeah, so this is kind of a unique opportunity with a book like this. Obviously, uh, with a high quality production and so forth, it's fairly costly, right? It's not
Mhm.
something that anybody's just gonna go out and buy, particularly somebody in Latin America. And So one of the ways that we can help as a church, and potentially even and beyond that, is by buying copies in advance, raising money, buying copies in advance to then distribute to people that would benefit from them. So at our church, we're right now in the month of August, we're raising money, and the amount that we raise we'll use to buy copies of the book pre-sale, and then when we get them in December, we'll be able to then distribute those to missionaries or others that we work with in Latin America. And Poema has actually set up a special website where, for others, if others are interested in doing that, they can place an order for one now, just hey, put in my order for a copy now, or they can place a larger order and get a discount. And by doing that, by placing a larger order now, the organization Poema gets a little bit extra funding to be able to support a larger print run and potentially drive the cost down in the future, potentially make this a little bit more accessible for folks in Latin America. So
that is so cool. I love
yeah.
it. So how could, suppose someone out there is watching this and maybe they want to get involved in that, where do we send them?
Yeah, so the website to go to is PP for Pilgrim's Progress. So pp.poema.co. So pp.poiema.co.
Okay, so we'll put that in the description of this video. No question about that.
Great.
All right, Nathaniel, thank you so much for sharing. Anything else you want to say about this project before we let you go?
No, I don't think so. I think we hit the high points. This is a great opportunity for us to expose our kids to key lessons that we're also thankful for in Pilgrim's Progress. And it's been great for my family, and I hope it'll be great for your family as well, and for others in Latin America.
All right. Well, very cool. Thanks for being on with us today. Don't forget, we'll post all of the relevant links in the description of this video. Thanks for checking in. Do love you lots, and we'll talk to you later.